Well, welcome everybody. We are excited to be here with our friends who are phenomenal musicians. They are the duo sometimes known to many as Gypsy Soul. They've toured widely, nationally and internationally. They've had numerous songs on the radio charts, in movies, in television shows, and they are now embarking on a new endeavor called their Keynote concert series, where they're going to share the lessons really they've learned through, in some ways, the life of hard knocks, I guess you could say, that musicians experience. But they'll be talking with us today about their new series and the lessons that they're going to be focusing on of resilience and innovation and adaptability. So Cilette, Swan, Roman Morykit, otherwise known as Gypsy Soul, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You.
Lovely to be here. Lovely to see you both as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
good to see you.
You can see that or hear that Roman is, from Atlanta. His southern accent is rather predominant.
Thank you. Thank you. I was wondering whether you were going to pick up on that.
Where are you from originally, Roman?
Just outside London, just north of London, Northamptonshire. Tiny little, well, it was a little villagey kind of feel. And actually Northampton was very, very small when I was there. And now it's, I think, 250,000 or maybe more than that now. Somebody was telling me recently. But I grew up predominantly in a little place called Rushmere, which is just on the outskirts. And, right next to me was cows in a field. So, it was very much kind of a rural upbringing that I had.
Cows and lots of rock stars. A lot of rock stars came from this town, apparently.
Thank you,
Really?
yeah, Bauhaus. You remember Bauhaus from the 80s?
Yeah.
Pete Murphy. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
he was there. And then there was a band. I was in school with a guy from the Jets, who were a 50s rockabilly band.
Yeah.
And,
Cool.
Yeah. So
it rubbed off on you, or you rubbed off on them, one way or the other.
something rubbed off on somebody.
Something in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I want to add a comment to Chris's intro, because the way I know you, of course, as musicians and friends, but you're Renaissance people. Like you've got such a wide range of skills. And I love that because everything you do shows up in your music, and all your music shows up in everything else you do, like your building, Roman, and your jewelry, Cilette. And I think that's kind of where we're at now with creative people, is that one area kind of bleeds over into another, and we just end up being creative all the time. And I really celebrate that in the two of you. You're amazing that way.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Right back at you, I might add.
Yes.
Yes.
We're speaking with incredibly
a bunch of Renaissance men.
people.
And we say Renaissance, if you don't mind.
Renaissance.
Yes, and Cilette, just for background, you aren't from London or Northampton. Where are you from originally?
Originally from Vancouver, Canada. I'm
All
a
right.
fellow Canuck and a dual national now. And Roman and I met in Edinburgh. I had been traveling. I was living in France for about 4 years and moved to Edinburgh. I felt it in my bones. I went there for one day and I said, I'm going to live here. I don't know. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I subsequently figured out that we had family lineage there that goes way, way back. And I fell in love with it. And Roman and I met through the music and actually through your brother. And just everything started from there.
Well, and after you met and got started, you ended up eventually in LA, not necessarily of your own choosing, but somebody convinced you to move to LA because that's where the music industry was happening, if I remember correctly.
Yes, indeed.
Do you want to tell the story?
Well, it's a lovely story of a lady that we met on an airplane. Her name is Ginger. She was wearing red cowboy boots, and we just thought she was adorable, and we started chatting with her at the bus station, and she only had a credit card, and the bus driver was not taking a credit card, and we needed to get to Edinburgh. We arrived in Glasgow, and Roman just said, oh, no problem, I'm going to pay for it. And we started chatting, and she asked us what we did, and we're musicians, and oh, how interesting, I'm in the entertainment business too, and chatted away, and it turns out her husband, Bill Immerman, was the financier or the lawyer that got the financing for Star Wars once everyone had turned down Star Wars. And so we loved that kind of scrappy aspect of them. And yeah, you can take it from there. And
Yeah, no, and she said, "Why are you moving to Vancouver?" Because we were just getting ready to move to Vancouver, which was a good question, of course, as we lived through a winter there and it was freezing. But she said, "When you decide to actually come to LA to pursue your music career, I will put on a party for you and introduce you to all my industry friends." So after about 6 months of living in Vancouver in the winter, and I was building, speaking of Renaissance, I was building a house, framing a house in the freezing cold in Vancouver. We had 6 months, we'd had enough, and our music career was definitely on the back burner. And we decided to move to LA, and she actually did put on that party for us, and we met a bunch of people that we're still friends with now. All from that meeting, just buying her a ticket because she didn't have any cash.
random acts,
Random
baby.
acts of kindness,
Random
I tell
acts. And a lot of them were industry people, and a lot of them helped us move our career along in many different ways. And like Roman said, we're still in touch with many of them. So it was an absolute blessing.
Yeah.
Well, good move. Speaking as one who lived in Vancouver and also did construction during the winter. Been there, done it, got the t-shirt, never again.
Oh,
Yeah.
brutal. Because it's the cold wet that just
It
gets
is.
into your bones. Edinburgh is very much like that too.
Yeah.
It's the summers there. It's like the saying, what is it? The coldest winter I spent was a summer in San Francisco. It's very much like that.
Exactly.
Edinburgh's freezing cold.
the first film I produced was in Vancouver, and production started in September and rolled into October. And people said, "Do you have rain gear? Because it's going to start raining." And I was like, "Yeah, I have rain gear." I had no idea what rain gear was,
Right.
really. And after the first day on location, where I was drenched to the bone, the production manager took me to a real store where I bought real rain gear and was able to survive the rest of that shoot without being like a drowned dog. So I have some sense of what you must have been dealing with.
Oh yeah, actually, it was the first day I was on the construction site. I wore layers of clothes, and by lunchtime I was completely drenched, and we had zero money. And Cilette went out. You took our last $75 and went to one of those stores that you were talking about and got me some wet gear so I could actually
Slickers.
survive. Because it's a cold wet that I have experienced nowhere else.
Well, and you're having to function. You
Yeah.
were up 30 feet in the air and slippery and carrying wood, and
I was the grunt.
a bunch of people got injured on that site during the time
Well,
you were there.
I jumped off a wall and landed on a nail which went through my foot.
Oh, great.
All the joys.
And I had to keep going back to work.
Such fun
'Cause
memories.
we were as poor as church mice, and another mouse had run off with a cheese.
I think music is a better career choice for both of you.
I
Yes.
think so. I think so.
Well, you when you did move to LA, lots of stories there, but I think one of the ones that I remember the most from talking to you about that time was that you really learned a whole other skill in terms of how to deal with people by playing at markets and street fairs. And that ability to navigate just people coming by and the intrusions and the noise and everything else. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think anybody who's been a musician and done that can appreciate it. But people who maybe see people playing live on street fairs or markets in their beginning of their career maybe don't appreciate exactly what that's like.
Well, it was one of those things where we made a commitment to each other that we wanted to make our living from being musicians. So after doing the whole demo thing and trying to get record companies, and we'd had meetings there was a company we were dealing with called Private Music that we'd had 9 meetings with, and they ended up passing. That's another story that I won't go into. We decided after that, we made our first CD, And then we realized that we needed to go where the people were, because we couldn't afford to have a radio campaign because it was ridiculously expensive. I think at the time it was $1 million to break a band. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. I'm sure you know full well. To break a band. So
Whoa.
it was incredibly humbling for us. And you have to put your ego aside in order to go and do that and play on the street. Because like you say, all of the distractions, people are not at their best when they're walking around and they're drunk. Some of these street fairs, because it's one of the few places where people can walk around with a beer or have a glass of wine or all of these kind of things. So it's dealing with those distractions. And if you had a bad attitude, you weren't going to sell any CDs, which meant we were going to be hungry. So we had to constantly adjust our attitudes and not react to all of the distractions that were happening around us, or not get, pissed off with people if they got in our faces, which of course they did at times, walking through our little area where we had all of our equipment, occasionally knocking over my guitars, these kind of things.
Grabbing the microphone.
Grabbing the microphone.
That was fun.
And you had a lovely moment with Swan.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I encouraged him to sing along and he was too drunk. Yes.
But, learning how to deal with that. And then, we started off playing at a swap meet, actually, next to the hot dog stand.
And what was interesting about that is that idea was inspired not by an agent or a manager in the music industry. It was a gentleman that approached us, and he was a businessman. He was an insurance agent who had been representing an artist in LA, Lau Teiser, who's a wonderful pianist. And he got Lau performing at places like Universal Studios. He said, let's take it to the people. Let's take it to the swap meets. Let's take it to the art and wine fairs, this kind of thing. And we kind of went kicking and screaming. We were all about getting into theaters and, having the beautiful production experience for our music and beautiful acoustic settings. And we learned really quickly that in order to do that, we needed to actually build our base, and we needed to build it from scratch. And that meant taking our music to the streets. And so we would get juried into art and wine fairs. Like we said, we did the swap meet. We met a different manager at the swap meet. So it was not as we had pictured our career starting, but in the end, we were able to rent theaters the people who wouldn't hire us at these theaters because they had never heard of us. We were able to rent these theaters and fill them and sell them out. And they're like, who are you guys? How did this happen? Because we had these relationships with people we had met on the street. Yeah.
That's incredible. It's now not everyone knows this, but Will, of course, was a young musical star in Canada. He and his brother, they were kind of like a cross between the Everly Brothers and the Osmonds. And he had his own moments of fame and elected not to pursue that. But Will, when you were young and performing for people, what was that like for you at that age?
Wow. Well, I think I was in shock for about 6 years because we started so young. I was 11 and my brother was 9.5, and suddenly we were on a television show every week singing country and Western music. And then we toured and I ended up emceeing. So there I am, age 12, 13, saying, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to 1,000 people. So I think at that age, you're so ill-equipped to do it that to do it, you kind of have to become someone else. So when I think back on that, and to folk music, and then we had our own rock band, I don't think I was really myself. I think I adopted some kind of persona to function in a very, very alien environment, being much older than I was in years. I had to be, we were scouted by the Ed Sullivan Show, and they turned us down, but we were in that milieu, and fortunately we decided not to keep going because we didn't really have the talent, and it's a tough industry, and I don't think we could have made it. But I think I was literally a different person. And I had to kind of get over that to get back to my authentic self. Now, it wasn't a problem, but I just think that was the reality. And I wonder how many young musicians or actors kind of end up doing that, kind of
Oh,
becoming
true.
someone different? I don't know.
Well, it's a great question, and I think I'm going to go back to your street fairs and wine, you know, wine fairs and so on, Rowan and Cilette, because the one thing I do notice about you when you are performing or off stage is you're you. You
Mm.
don't really take on a persona, and that's actually quite rare.
Yeah.
Um, how did that come about? Because I think that's part of your appeal. I think that's why people relate to you so well. But was that cultivated? Was it a choice, or was it just what happened?
Well, you
You
go
know,
ahead because you
I
were.
think for us it was never about fame. We wanted to make our living from our art. We wanted to find audiences to share our message with. And, you know, we were always as a married couple as well. So we weren't in it for the sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of aspect of music, you know. We really
Missed the
wanted,
best part.
what's that?
You missed the best part.
Oh, bummer.
Well, not really, because we had sex, drugs, and rock and roll in our marriage. So
So it was all good. It was all good. But I think our motivation may have been different than, let's say, a lot of players that we had worked with that wanted to go on the road because they wanted to meet chicks, this kind of thing. We really had a different motivation. And all of this time on the road and at the art and wine fairs, it really built our character. And I think for us, we didn't need a persona because we felt that the song was the feature. If we can make the song the very best that we can, the song was always elevated, and we sort of were secondary to the song.
yeah, I think that's true. I mean, it's the different motivations. I'd had that experience of that kind of incredible rock star experience as a young man. I was in my early 20s, and my band in England got signed to A&M Records. So I had a taste of
Mm.
everything, the good, the bad, and the extremely ugly of
Yeah.
that whole experience, where we had this massive deal with A&M. Unlimited recording costs, unlimited promotion, and we got £150,000 advance. I'd make a call to the bass center. I was a bass player predominantly at that time, and equipment would just arrive in the studio. I was having breakfast with Robert Plant and hanging out with Duran Duran at the time. So I had those kind of experiences, and it when it all fell apart, which invariably it does, the percentage of people that actually make it, I forget what one of the statistics is, but I think of bands that get signed to record labels, 95% of them never sell more than 5,000 copies, and it actually may be even higher. It's a very, very tiny percentage of people that actually make it. And my bandmates were very much into the fame aspect, and I never was. Me and the drummer, it's strange actually, because it's always the rhythm section and the most grounded, I think, of a band. And for me, it was always the respect of my peers, and being as innovative as possible, especially growing up in the 70s. The worst thing you could do was copy someone else. It was all about finding your own voice. So that was drummed into me at a very, very young age, culturally. So it was never about being famous. It was always about the song, improving myself, being as the best version of myself that I could be. And that's really what I think drove both of us. So, what's the old saying? You might as well be yourself because everybody else is taken.
Yeah.
We really embraced that aspect when we were performing. And we never rehearsed anything. We never rehearse anything that we say. We're always speaking, we're reacting to the audience, and we're reading the room as best you can, as I think as you should when you're performing or giving a speech or whatever. You have to be present.
Can I make a comment about that? Because I've been privileged to enjoy quite a number of your concerts, and that's always what I leave with, is that you're authentic, you're connecting with the audience. And what I observe with big name performers, when I've been at live performances, like live concerts, like say the Moody Blues, I saw them years ago in Vancouver, that they don't do that the same way. I don't want to pick on the Moody Blues, they were probably fine, but the moments when a star on stage breaks from the script and just says, "Hi, how are you?" I always felt that the audience just went delirious.
Right.
Because here's a real person behind the famous person. Well, my experience of you guys is that you do that all the time, that it isn't just a little snippet, that that's how you show up on stage. And to me, that is as enjoyable part of your performance as your music.
Wow.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for saying
I mean,
that.
that's really what we have always aimed for, is to be the most authentic version of ourselves, which is really not to have a persona, which is, I think, why not only have we built fans, but we've actually built a community through the music. I mean, we met a ton of people at the swap meet that would come out every weekend to come and see us, and then there would be like 20 or 30 of us after the swap meet that would go out to a restaurant and just hang out together.
Cool.
And we did it for years, and still, when we go back to a lot of places, when we toured, the last time we toured the West Coast was in 2019. Well, actually, we did it last year, 2020, 24.
Pre-COVID.
But pre-COVID, 2019, we toured pretty extensively that year. And all the people, not all the people, but a lot of the people that came out, we have known these people for as long as we've been together, 20, 25 years.
Wow. Wow.
And they still come out because of what you just said, because of that connection that we were able to cultivate just by being authentic.
And we would create these fan weekends. Like I think the first and second year we rented Mile Square Park, or a section of Mile Square Park. It literally is a square mile. It's humongous in Orange County. And I don't know, we had 100 people there and everybody got to meet. And then the relationships that develop outside of us, but because the music was the catalyst, is just,
that's
cool. That's always been such a beautiful thing for us. And a lot of these people are still friends, and you'll see them on the live stream that we do. They're, "Hey, Jan, how's it going? And Amy, I haven't seen you in a long time." And like, they have a relationship outside of the music. So it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
There's something you're bringing up here, talking about lessons learned from, the music industry and the road that apply to, anybody's business or life, is the element of authenticity, which is one of your hallmarks together, and the cultivation of relationships. And I think those are two really powerful skills and abilities that you developed and honed, that have served you well. And as you just said, Cilette, that have served the people who got to know you and got to know each other, it served them well. So, I mean, that in and of itself is remarkable. And I know when it came, for example, to when you did record your first album and you'd gone through this whole process with private music and 9 meetings, and then they turned you down, and it was a good thing because they were about to be acquired and you would have been dropped. Those are important things. But how that first album came to be, the decisions you made, and the momentum that created, and the ripple effect that it generated, I think is an interesting story, if you'd be game to share that.
Yeah, it's after the 9 meetings with private, we were looking at each other because we'd been making demos, because that was the model at that time, was to make demos. And go and have meetings with record companies and see if they'd come, and then you put on a showcase, blah blah blah. We realized, we're spending all of this money to make demos. Why don't we just make a record, so then at least when we go out there, we have something to sell, and people will be taking a piece of us home with them. So we managed to find this studio. We were always wheeling and dealing and trading and bartering and doing whatever we can, because we were broke most of the time, and it's like, we'd get a new credit card and make another demo with it, and the Cilette would be working hard at that time because I wasn't able to, because I was still with a visitor's visa and all this kind of stuff, so I couldn't actually work. So Cilette was doing that stuff. We managed to scrape money together to make our first album with this guy that had just moved from New York to LA, and he was looking for work and we were looking for studio time. So we made a record in 44 days from start to finish. And then because we did that, we'd run out of money with the recording process, that we couldn't master it, we couldn't manufacture it. But some friends that we'd met, actually one of them that we'd met at Ginger's party when we first moved to LA, he got us time at A&M Records to master the record. And then another guy who eventually became our publisher for a while paid for the first 1,000 CDs. So it was like that. We inspired other people to help, which I think is definitely the American story to a large extent. I don't think we could have had this career in England. I don't think it would have been possible. Certainly at the time.
I was just going to say, it's also an immigrant story.
Yes.
Because people see your motivation and your dedication, and they want to kind of climb on board and help elevate. And sometimes it's providing a visa for someone so they can stay in the country, and their family can grow and develop. And I think we were very fortunate because we were very driven. Not that we had any answers, we kind of made it up as we went along, because we realized that the formula or the model that existed did not really serve our music or us as people. And so we were creating this life and this music career as we went along. And gratefully, we built a community at the same time. So we had a lot of support. We were doing fan funding campaigns before they existed. We were making it up as we went along.
Oh yeah, many things like that.
And so grateful. So we truly were fan funded,
Well, it was also, again, you mentioned it earlier, Cilette, when talking about this guy, James, who was an insurance salesman who just loved music, and he kind of helped us out, and he really kind of helped direct us towards being self-sufficient by getting us to play at art and wine fairs, shopping malls, all of these things that most musicians would turn their nose up to because
true.
it's not glamorous. But we wanted to be successful musicians, which meant you had to make your living from it. It wasn't about getting your face on the cover of whatever magazine, because all of that stuff pretty much is worthless in the grand scheme of things. It's nice for the ego, but it doesn't pay the bills. And for us, we wanted to be musicians. We had a calling for it. It was not about fame and fortune, as I said before. It was about being authentic to ourselves and writing music that was meaningful to us and hopefully other people. And that was our definition of success.
And along those lines, it was interesting. We had a conversation recently where we would get fees to perform at shows, and they didn't validate us in the same way as when someone took the time to buy our CD. That had so much more meaning because they were taking a piece of us home, and hopefully we kind of became part of their life soundtrack, if only for a moment. But for us, there was so much more gratification in someone taking the time and the energy and the finances to take our music home with them. So.
Well, this is supremely inspiring because it really emphasizes the value of our humanness. There's our skills, our professionalism, how we use AI, etc., to improve our look and our sound. But at the heart of it all is real humans. And just to hear you describe how you've built your career on being authentic humans, that's really inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's you're mentioning that, Will, too. The other thought that comes to mind for me is I'm going to hearken on another skill here that you're demonstrating that again is a life skill that you've learned and you've demonstrated, and that is tenacity. The unwillingness to give up, and allowing your passion to really drive your story, as opposed to letting circumstances generate excuses that kept you down. I mean, that seems to be a big part of your story.
That's beautifully said, Chris. Thank you for that. Thank you.
When COVID came along, I mean, here you'd by then had quite a successful career. You'd had songs on the radio. You'd been touring extensively. You know, you had all kinds of things going well, multiple albums being sold, and suddenly COVID comes along, and your entire tour gets shut down. Your entire way of making money, for a lot of people, that just completely derailed them, especially people in the music industry who were used to being out in concert venues or clubs or whatever their tour was. What was that like for you, and what was it that motivated you to come up with a solution that I think you've done as well or better than anybody else?
Thank you.
Well, you know what? I think we were just about to leave on tour for Washington, and that was kind of the epicenter at the time. We were going to Kirkland. It was actually the epicenter of the pandemic at the time, and we spoke to a couple of the promoters, and they said, "Well, no, I'm sure it'll be fine. Oh, you should come up." And we were going, "Yeah, I don't think this is a good idea." So at that time, we had probably, between 70 and 100 shows booked for that year. And we kind of looked at each other and it's like, what the hell are we going to do? And a friend of ours got in touch with us and said, you know what? If you want to do any kind of live streaming, now's the time to get the gear before everybody else gets it. And I've got a platform that you can run through. You remember, Chris, because you helped us through this whole period of time. We were all kind of making it up as we went along, and we had 3 weeks to get it together. We thought, why don't we do a birthday live stream for Cilette's birthday, which was on March 30th, I think. March 30th. And I think we actually did it on your birthday.
And everything fell apart around the 12th, 13th, when the national and the international announcements were happening. And
they shut everything down.
Yeah.
So this guy helped me, Jonathan, he helped me kind of walk through the whole process and figure out a way to actually get the live streaming up and running. And because we had done all of this touring for all of these years, I mean, I don't know how many people, we had over 1,000 people watching that first time, if not more, actually. I think it was more than that.
No.
And did incredibly well, and we realized here's a viable way to do this, because I mean, as we all know, this thing dragged on for years, and the result of it dragging on for so long, as we found out last year when we went out on tour, is people's habits have changed completely. A lot of the venues shut down, and we've been doing this now. We do this once a month, the last Saturday of the month, and we've been doing it for 5 years now, without a paywall, so we can make it affordable for people that can't afford anything. And there are a number of people who are incredible supporters of us that donate every single month and help us keep it going, which affords the people that can't afford to pay anything the ability to watch. And we viewed the whole thing when we were putting it together actually as a service to all these people that were shut inside their homes, that were going crazy, quite literally, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, it's back to that connection in the community thing. People were feeling deeply isolated and a little hopeless, because the 2 weeks turned into 3 months, which turned into 6 months, and people were getting a little panicky, and we're like, okay, we can provide some comfort and some connection. And we didn't do it with Zoom so that people could actually see the faces, which that kind of would have been nice, but it wasn't really a feature that we could do in the beginning. But people connected through their comments. And I think the comments and the cards and the letters that we got were that people just felt less lonely, and they felt like there was a little bit of hope. They could move forward. We donated 10% for the first couple years to some of the local charities and the people that were suffering, because so many people lost their jobs. Our favorite restaurant shut down, this kind of thing. And we're like, how can we use this microscopic platform that we have to connect people? So it always seems to kind of go back to that for us.
Connecting people, sure.
Yeah.
Well, you really raised another important point there, which is being in service. and leading with contribution.
Mm,
And these days, there's so many kind of entrepreneur types that pick a field to make money from. Like
mm,
they don't really care much about it. It's just they think, oh, we can leverage the need in the marketplace and get rich or
right.
famous or whatever it is. But clearly, you've always been about offering yourselves and your music as a gift, as a service, as a contribution to help other people have a improved life experience. And I just wish everybody did that. In fact, I
Mm,
sometimes joke that if I was ever king, and had one wish, I'd make it that everybody had to do whatever they were doing in a field that they loved.
mm,
You're working like as a shoemaker, you love shoes. If you're in a restaurant business, you love food. It's not just that you pick a field to make money in. You do
yes.
something that you love. Clearly, you guys are filled with passion for doing what you're doing. And thank you. Thank you. It makes a big difference. I can just imagine some of the people who were really suffering during the COVID catastrophe really gaining something from what you offered them. That was a real service. Thank you.
Mm,
It's
thank you.
very nice of you to say. I mean, we actually got a lot of letters and emails from people just telling us that, you know, it really, and still actually there are people that still tune in, and it's just it's their connection to a whole bunch of different people, that, you know, this platform provides for them. And I mean, I guess we've always done it. I mean, when we were in Ashland, we did the Christmas concerts every year,
Yeah.
and you know, we would always donate a portion of that. I mean, it really is. It's kind of the religious model, actually, of tithing.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really important. It's like whether you believe in anything or not, that model of actually tithing a percentage of what you earn
Hmm.
back to the community, what in whatever way, and it can be service, it can be money, time, all of these kinds of things. I think it's actually really important to keep the flow moving in your life, and I think a lot of people forget that.
Well, I think the Christmas concerts, which were in Ashland, and they were, we did 19 years of these Christmas concerts, these benefits. It inspired others through our platform to donate to the cause that they might not have been aware of. There was a lot of poverty in the beginning. It was an impoverished
With access,
organization. So Access provided food, medical supplies. They would pay people's rent and electric bills and all this kind of thing. We had no idea in such a gloriously beautiful and seemingly well-to-do community that there was so much poverty. And it really struck us. And we're like, what can we do? What can we do? And we were brand new in this town. And I remember we went around to a bunch of the shops. And one of them, I just love him. He had that beautiful wine restaurant and became a vintner. His name escapes me at the moment. But he gave us money and he said, I don't need to be on your poster. I don't need any accolades. I don't need any attention for this. But I think what you guys are doing is really important and I'd like to be a part of it and I'm going to support you. And people gave us spa treatments and ski trips and all this kind of stuff. So our very first concert in Ashland
We
was
offered for
was
free.
for Accent. We offered it for free to the community. And then it created this trust where people would write a $500 check sitting in the audience because the music and the message made them feel good and they knew that it was for a good cause and they trusted because we were involved with it. It just became this beautiful synergistic thing. And I think in some cultures they call it Siva or Seva. And that lasted 19 years. In fact, our very last Ashland show, which was for Winter Spring, after about 17 years of working with Winter Spring, that was the December right before COVID hit. And that was our last full live performance.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make 20 years, but it wasn't going to happen with Winter Spring. But I think for me, that was the biggest joy, is that it created an awareness of a company or a cause that people ultimately wouldn't have known about unless we had sort of produced this event. And that always had a great place in our heart.
Well, and it became just a favorite of the town, right? It was like you couldn't have Christmas without that, right? So, I mean, it really did become a kind of a beloved tradition. And, now flashing forward, here you are, decades from when you started. You're now back able to tour. You just toured this last year with the West Coast tour. You had a phenomenal show at the Musical Instrument Museum in Arizona, which was sold out. And all of a sudden, you also decide that you want to include a keynote concert as part of what you do. Uh, what led you to that, and what is it that people can expect from a Gypsy Soul keynote concert?
Thank
Well,
you.
what led us to that was actually Cilette. I mean, it was after we got back from, actually, it was from the MIM show. It was normally, I mean, I think we've played it six or seven times, and we've sold it out all but one time. And this last time that in 2024 was such a grind to get everybody out there, because we realized from that point onwards, and then subsequently with our September tour, that people's tour going and concert going habits have completely changed. And we had to work extremely hard. Before, we would just send out an email, the venue would send out an email, and it would sell out, a couple of months before the show. This time, I mean, we had to really work hard to get people out. And we had just finished that show, and I was paying a bunch of bills, and so I came into the studio, and she said, "You know what? We can't keep doing this. We can't keep doing.
It's not sustainable.
The shows. I mean, I think I'm going to be a little controversial here, but I think the music business is dying. I think." We certainly have felt it. People don't buy CDs anymore. It's basically streaming. People are not going out to concerts. They're not supporting original music. People seem to want nostalgia, which is fine. And, they go out to tribute bands and see things like that because they're trying to recreate moments from the past, I think.
Oh, and it's a comfort.
It is a comfort.
And there's a time and a place for all of it.
But we realized that we can't keep doing what we were doing. And Cilette came to me and said, I've been following this guy for a number of years now, and he was talking about keynote concerts. And I said, okay, tell me what it is. It's like, sell me the idea of this, as I'm writing this $1,000 check for, for all the building supplies for this place. And she told me about it. And why don't you talk about it?
I think that all of the tools that we learned along the way, the adaptability, the resilience, taking a breakdown, making it into a breakthrough, all of these things, we realized that during COVID, a lot of people were changing and pivoting, changing careers. They were pivoting direction. Many people were working from home, and they were needing new setups for their home because they needed home offices. We were getting a lot of this kind of feedback from people, and also the fact that still people didn't feel safe in a live environment with a lot of people in one room. So when we realized that these large theaters, didn't have the staff to do the marketing, and the onus was entirely on us to fill these venues, which in part we were used to, but even radio stations that had 25 employees previously, and we would get on and do a feature, and that would help sell out a show. They might have 3 volunteers now. We kept experiencing this in every city that we played in. So when I heard about these keynote concerts, I'm like, there's a lot of people that could benefit from our hard-won, the tools we've learned. Truly, adaptability, resilience. This is going to apply to any industry, to any kind of audience. And I thought, rather than going for the same microscopic piece of pie that 10,000 musicians are going for, let's say in the Western states of 300 theaters, when you go to a larger environment like a corporate world or the world of seminars or annual meetings or workshops, you're dealing with millions of people. And we felt like it would be a place where our message would have more reach. And when I realized that we could do that with music as well, it didn't feel like we were abandoning our career and our dream. It felt like an expansion of formats, if you will. Not like we were losing anything. We were broadening our scope. So I said, Roman, we need to pay for this. It was a seminar, a bunch of courses. It's kind of like a PhD in public speaking. I'm like, we really need to do this. And he said, well, you got to convince me. So I watched the kind of pre-show and I wrote down a bunch of notes and I approached him and he's like, yeah, I think this is something that we need to do. Yeah. And we, from December 26th through about the end of March, we worked on it almost every day and have been developing the stories. These are stories that we've just lived. We didn't live the stories thinking, wow, there's a teaching moment and we should, set that aside. We just lived these stories and these experiences. And so it's kind of reverse engineering the past 25, 30 years, 25 on the road, 34 together. But I think we're going to hit the 30-year mark of Gypsy Soul in about 2 years. So that's a lot of information to go through and kind of fine tune and put through the lens of how would this benefit people, either entrepreneurs, business people, people in the healthcare industry, caregivers, you name it, couples that work together. Wow, we've got a lot of experience in that department.
Yes, we do.
So that's kind of how that all came to be. And we're just refining it and refining it. We've done a couple of them so far, and it's just glorious. It's like the perfect next step for us.
Well, I'd never heard of the term before, keynote concert.
Yes.
So apparently this is a thing?
It is a thing.
It's a microscopic thing at this point, but it is a thing
it's
that
a
I
seed.
think
Yes.
it's a seed, and hopefully we're on actually the forefront of it. But yeah, as Cilette was saying, it's we have had so many experiences, like a lot of people. I mean, everybody's got a great story. Everybody could write a book of their life,
of course.
But we have had some unique experiences that we've had to overcome a lot of challenges, both health challenges, personal challenges, career challenges. I mean, we have gone as musicians from analog to digital. We have been part of that whole transition, and that in of itself has required a level of adaptability that a lot of people don't necessarily experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting as you're making that point. I'm thinking about the two of you. You went from analog to digital, from live to virtual, and now you're going from a concert to a hybrid of a keynote concert. And it's you're demonstrating adaptability really well. And I'm flashing back to when the live streams first started up, and I was involved behind the scenes here. We were kind of flying by the seat of our pants with equipment and trying to figure out latency rates in the broadcast and all kinds of things. But you both have this remarkable ability to be willing to innovate and to learn. And I watched a lot of live streams during that time because I wanted to see what was working and what wasn't. And there were several things that you did that others didn't. And that was getting the right camera equipment, getting the right sound gear, getting the right mechanism to be able to broadcast the live stream effectively. You kept fine tuning it. You kept improving it till it got to a point to where what it was doing was capturing the essence of how you are live. And it goes back to the wine fairs. I mean, you were sitting there with people being very personable, sharing your message, sharing your music, and doing it in a way that came right into their living room. Now, as you make this additional part of your repertoire, to be able to take that same type of message, package it a little bit differently so that you are calling out the lessons as you tell your stories, and now opening up to an audience who probably otherwise would not only not hear your music, which is wonderful, they wouldn't hear your stories. wouldn't hear the lessons.
Mm.
So I think you're not surprisingly on the forefront of something that could become really cool.
We hope so. I mean, we again, we don't half do anything. We go all in. I think that's life. If you're going to do something, either do it 100% or don't bother.
We hold
Well,
each other to a really high standard, you know,
yeah.
Yeah, I
and
mean, I
a
always
high
have.
expectation. And I
Well,
don't know that we would know how to do it any other way.
No.
You
yeah.
know,
Well, the other thing that I'm observing just from knowing you for years is that you've got your context right. Like when people prioritize, like let's say music, they're a musician, it's not quite as authentic as prioritizing life. Like,
Mm.
I get that you guys, you're incredible musicians, you do all kinds of other things, but you have an overall context for it, which is bigger. And I think that's what includes people. That's what invites them into your tent. They go, oh, I can relate to this. I'm not a musician. I like music, but there's something else here. There's a mystery factor which I can relate to. John Steinbeck said, we tell stories so that we don't feel so alone.
Right.
Exactly.
And I've never forgotten that as a storyteller, that whether we're using music or writing or art or anything, it's all in service to helping we humans hurtling through space on this orb we call Earth not feel so alone, to feel that we're part of a community and that somehow we belong. And I get that you guys are conscious about that. And that's what makes the difference. And I think that's part of what explains your incredible ability to create community. You know what kind of community you're inviting people into. It isn't a community of musicians, it's a community of humans. And I
Mm.
think you honor everybody for whatever field that they happen to be drawn to.
Mm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can't
as
add to
you
that.
Well, it's beautifully said. It's beautifully
Yeah,
said.
it is. It is beautifully said. And I'm thinking about, going forward. So if somebody's interested, which I can't imagine they wouldn't be, but how do they get in touch with you? What's the web address, for example, that they can go to explore this keynote concert series?
It's gypsysoul.com/keynote or gypsysoul.com/keynote concerts. It's the same
That's
thing. It will lead you to the same place.
And one of the things I wanted to share is that, generally a keynote speaker is given about an hour, and then sometimes there's breakout sessions and workshops after. But the structure of this talk is so interesting because it does incorporate music. It's not just the old speaking behind the podium and it's very dry. There's 3 stories that are going to, and we have many, many, many stories, so we can kind of fine tune depending on the audience. But it's 3 stories, 3 songs, and 3 strategies. And we like an opening exercise and kind of a closing exercise as well. I'm going to say that again, a closing exercise.
Yeah,
as
I'm
well.
picturing it. I'm trying to imagine what a clothing exercise is.
We can edit that out.
Oh no, let's leave it in.
Yeah, but there is a structure to it, which I found really exciting. Again, it inspired me that we could keep the music. We've always tried to have a message in our music with the lyrics and the music, and communicate beyond just what people are hearing. We're about what people are feeling. And we've been in environments where long form storytelling was not encouraged. When you're in a theater, you've got people behind the stage. So we're looking at the audience, but there's people to the side of us that are like, let's wrap this up, people. Let's wrap this. So we always felt the pressure to keep our stories really pithy and short and, just about, well, we wrote this song because blah, 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 and we never felt the freedom to really give people the pure insight into our hearts of what is the background of all of this? Where did this all come from? What are our origin stories? And so that's the beauty of this, is we get to expand as artists in a more corporate environment, which sounds counterintuitive, but it seems to work. And I think the formula works really, really well. So,
And we've always written these kinds of songs. I mean, it's not as if we started writing songs for this particular format. You know, one song, "We Are What We Believe," "I'm Calling In," "Who." I mean, there's a whole bunch of songs that we've always written about this, asking questions of ourselves. You know, if we had just one more day, what would you do with it?
be the change.
Be the change. I mean, all of these songs. We're writing about. What's the best way to put this? Life experiences, how we show up in the world. What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of why we're here? How can we be better people? How can we be more in touch with other human beings? This is what we've always written about, and we've got 15 albums, and this is what we've always written about.
Well, it's about transforming heartbreak and transforming grief and disappointment. You know, we've always been about, you know, we've had a lot of obstacles to overcome, and it's how can we share that in a way that isn't preachy.
Right.
And you can do that with music, and you can do that with humor. But now in a speaking format, how do we share that so that people actually can take the message home and maybe it has some impact in their life, and they can, you know, make different choices or elevate them in some way. So it feels like this is, like I said earlier, it's a natural transition, and it's also an expansion. It's not like we're losing the freedom that we had to be musicians. It's an expansion of our craft. So,
Well, the other relevant thing that I've seen you guys do is really have a great balance between what's called being on the nose, which is, you know, message, author's message, and evocative, more nuanced, more subtle. And good communication, especially intended to be inspiring or empowering, is a balance between those two. And you guys really have a natural way of doing that. You know, you'll be singing a song that's very on the nose in the sense that it has a real message, which is great. And then Roman cracks a joke.
right.
That reminds you of a story. And we all relax in the audience, go, "Oh, wow, cool. I get that." And then we go back to something more on the nose, which is time for. And, you know, what that recalls for me is how informed I've been listening to podcasts and realizing that the topic is never the dominant thing. I learn from the resilience and adaptability communicated by whoever's speaking and apply it to my own life. So your stories could be about anything. And yet the message, like I learned something from hearing someone talk about bow hunting for elk, you know, which I've never done and I'm never going to do. But
Right.
something they encountered in that experience that caused them to need to be more resilient helps me. And then I apply it to something I'm doing, managing my forest here in the woods. So thank you for that, because I think that's a tremendous awareness that people are getting, is that we can learn from everything if it's
Absolutely.
presented in the right way. And you guys do that marvelously.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as we wrap up our time here, I will tag on to the end of this podcast. So stay on, everybody, and watch what they call the sizzle reel for your keynote address, so you can get a chance to get a feel for them, their music, how much people love them. There's some great testimonials in there. I'll tag that onto the end because I think it's great to get even an additional feel for who you are and what you can bring to whether it's a corporate event or a personal growth thing, a spiritual event, whatever that might be. So happy to tag that onto the end. And again, it's www.gypsysoul.com/keynote or keynote concerts.
Either one.
Excellent. We'll put that up on the screen too.
Yep.
So thank you both for a wonderful conversation and a chance to celebrate what you have done, the remarkable journey you've been on, and what you're now creating anew.
Well, thank you for having us. It was a great conversation, as always, with you guys.
What a joy you both are, and an inspiration. You
Both
both
of you,
are.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing with us this next step in your amazing career. And I can't wait to be part of the first one.
Thank you.
It was spectacular. They are so talented and so full of energy and so full of love.
Wanted a house or a car and have it fallen through at the last minute. And then you find out, yes. And then you find out actually it was not that great a deal after all, and you dodged the bullet. No. Ever had that? No?
All about dodging.
Terribly sorry. That's not a good story over there.
So deep with so much to say, important things to share, you know?
And it's hard to remember that life isn't happening to you, it is happening for you.
Oh my gosh, she is amazing. The first words, my heart just, I felt it in my heart. I really fluttered.
I wrote about him. I thought it was going to be kind of cheaper than therapy. And I think it works, because I think this applies to a lot of people's relationships. It's about not losing yourself in a marriage or a relationship. It's about self-love and self-care.
What did you think?
It was awesome.
It blew me away. I was not prepared for what I heard tonight.
I'm blown away because it's like sitting in a living room and they're cutting jokes with their friends. If you've never seen these guys live, please come see them. It's definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. And they're such awesome people.
So we made our first CD, Test of Time, in 44 days, from start to finish. Now here's the bummer though. We'd run out of money, so we couldn't master it, we couldn't manufacture it. But here's the interesting thing, when you actually take the initiative to do something, it's amazing how the universe responds.
It's unbelievable. If you don't go to one of these shows, there's something wrong with you.
Been great having you. Before you go, though, I'd like to learn, you know, that really high note that you hit? Would you teach me that before we go? Is that how you do that?
It might
Just walk over here a second.
Yeah.